Welcome to Community Insight, a show about the family well-being movement. I'm your host, Valerie Frost. This season, we're exploring how people across the country are testing new approaches to support communities. We're talking to emerging leaders who are actively creating solutions that will shape a more just future for youth and families. Today's guest is Mike Williams, founder of Dreams and Success Homes. Mike is working at the intersection of housing, youth who are aging out of foster care, and private investment. So here's how it works. Mike recruits young professionals to buy starter homes as investments. They then agree to rent out their properties. Mike's organization leases the homes at market rates and rents it to young adults aging out of foster care. The homeowners commit to showing up once a month, hosting dinners, and sharing how they built stability and wealth. The young people, whom Mike calls dreamers, commit to a long-term agreement that includes 40 hours a week of work or school, personal development, and community service. While most people are thinking about transitional housing, Mike is thinking about building generational wealth. When the program works, young adults get a chance to learn the practicalities, and they are in the position to purchase their own home. This is what sets him apart, and he's about to see his first cohort purchase a home. But working with youth transitioning to adulthood comes with challenges, and Mike is transparent about those risks. In this conversation, Mike walks us through the mechanics, the safeguards, and the trade-offs. He talks openly about maintenance costs, burnout, boundaries, depression, and the pressure that can come with high expectations. I started our conversation by asking Mike about how he attracts the investors that underlie the whole program.
Who we target are young professionals when we collaborate with property owners or individuals who want to buy real estate. So the first question really I ask anybody is, hey, are you interested in investing in real estate? And if they say yes, I'm like, hey, are you interested in holding, not flipping? And so what that means is, hey, I want to buy a property, I want to hold it, and I want to rent it. And so because we target young professionals, we're not buying very expensive properties that nobody can afford. We're buying very specific price points that typically anybody making $50,000, $60,000 a year could put a down payment on and make. And so what we do is, if they're interested, then we're like, hey, are you also buying the property is great, but are you also interested in being hands-on with whoever moves in, because we need your commitment once a month to come into the property and host a dinner, be hands-on, tell your story, how you got this property and what you're going through or what you've been through in life and how you've become successful to buy a property, because that's the key. Showing young people that you come from in a society that typically doesn't think about wealth. And so we identify a young professional, then they are connected to banks. Banks are, anybody in the local community. We have partners that are lenders and financial institutions, but they may have their own. They may have their own realtor. So we just bridge the gap and educate them how to acquire a property that we can utilize. Once they acquire it, then they rent it to us. We master lease it, and then from there, we collaborate with local agencies to house young people to move in.
All right, so these are starter homes, and these are people who can be role models. So let's walk down one young person. So this person, you mentioned the transition from 17 to 18. Why not recommit to the state? What would you say to them to get them to come to the homes instead?
So individuals that come into our home, most of the time, all of our young adults are the ones who typically like, nah, I'm not going to stay with the foster care system. I'm leaving as far as possible. Nah, I'm good. I don't want to deal with you. Because as you can imagine, most of those young people think that somebody's going to be trying to tell them what to do, tell them how to live and control their lives. And what we do is we let them know, hey, you're turning 18, and no matter how you feel, there is a sense of commitment to society where you have to follow. There's laws, regulations, and things. You just can't do what you want. So why not pick a community who's willing to meet you where you at? And so our homes are very non-judgmental, safe spaces. So no matter your story, no matter your past, we're willing to interview you and give you a chance, as long as you show up to the interview and can truly tell us what your dreams are. You don't have to know exactly what you want to be, but you just got to say, hey, you know exactly who you want to be, and you're willing to do the work to get there. And so all of our young people know that when they move in with us, that they have that non-judgmental safe space, They have relationships that immediately wrap around them, that typically, when you look at individuals supporting young people aging out, they're trying to tell them what to do. But for us, we're just meeting them where they're at and asking them what they want to do. And so our whole environment is very therapeutic with putting them in the driver's seat and letting them run the show while we work on creating a collaborative space.
All right, so you all create the environment, youth are driving. So what does daily life actually look like for one of them?
So all of our young people that do move in, the big factor that they all end up really making us talk through is they have to make a commitment not just to what the state requires. The state only requires 20 hours of school or work a week, and they'll cover your, housing. But in society, that's not normal. You got to work 50, 60 hours a week to cover your housing and to pay your bills and to live your life. And so the first commitment in our housing model is 40 hours a week that you have to commit to. That's the 20 hours of work of school. And then it's 20 hours made up of personal development and community service. So we're educating our young people all about, hey, yeah, going to work in school is great, but that's not going to solve the root challenges that you have where you're going to struggle when you fail, when you get rejected, when you get, dismissed from opportunities that really may be real, and it's not real abandonment and rejection like you felt in childhood. And so we make them face personal development and service, and then we give them an incentive every week if they meet those requirements. And so every day our young person wakes up, what the requirements look like in personal development and service is going to be like goal setting. It's going to be connecting with your relationships at least 10 to 15 minutes a day. Those are who are your safe team. It looks like understanding your triggers. So every morning, meditating, reflecting on things. Every night, using a checklist. Every day, using motivational videos when you wake up to get your day started. And so it's a schedule that's created and customized to each individual. And then from there, it's tracked and monitored by all of their specialists and support teams.
All right, so now that we're clear on how this works, let's really get into it. Let's talk about the risk.
Yes.
Right, so you already mentioned it. You're working with transition age or former foster youth. So there's a population that is labeled high risk for a long time, right? So how are you accounting for the reality whilst trying to offer something different?
So the risk when we think about housing, especially young people, at the end of the day, the major risk that a lot of people look at these young people at is property damage, physical aggression, the things that they hear about when there's 15, 16, 17, and they're being verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, having all these behavior challenges. Our belief is that those challenges rose because they felt mentally that they were controlled in a box and they were just trying to break out. And most systems make you feel like that. And so the first thing that we try to focus on is just that, because the risk for us is not everything that people think of. Yes, it's property damage. Yes, it's all the behavior challenges. But if you be real with them and let them know, hey, I get you have these challenges. I get this in your past. But I want you to be aware that if you show up in reality now and do that same thing, it could cost you, and you could be homeless, you could be arrested, like you could be these other things. And that's what this system really doesn't do well at 15, 16, 17. They just say, hey, you're disrespectful, you're bad, you're gone. But it's like, no, you're disrespectful, you have challenges, and you not only are disrespectful in the moment, it doesn't make you disrespectful, it makes you not understand how to value this other person other than the stick. And so they never understand how to value relationships, and they never understand how to value opportunities, because whenever they have behavior challenges, they're not broken down to them, realistically. So the risk, when we talk about us, the risk is honestly depression and anxiety that we cause within our housing organization because of the hope, the faith we have in them, because we build them up and say, hey, you can be anything you want, you've been through this, you can achieve that, and these are the steps you need to get. We give them their own room, their own space, resources, and support. But then it's like, whoa, this is a lot. What do I really do with it? And so when they can't show up in the schedules they create or the relationships they're committing to, it makes them feel, sad. It makes them feel angry. It makes them feel all these things, which causes depression, or it gives them anxiety because it's like, hold on, I just went through this today and I got to wake up today and I got to do it all over again. And I know I can't do it because I'm going to be homeless. So it's like, hold on, I got to do it right. And now we're dealing with somebody that's like, hold on, no, slow down, slow down. Like, you can fail, just show up. Like, you're not going to know how to meditate. You're not going to know how to call somebody and have a healthy relationship the moment you turn 18. So we're not expecting that. We're expecting you to call somebody and honestly be silent because you might not know what to say. And I'm going to give you your kudos for actually just calling. And so the risk most of the time for us in totality is like smoking and anxiety and depression, because they're solving all of the things that they feel while we're believing in them and pressuring them into a corner of progression.
So we started the question with the perceived risks, and then you reframed it to the real risks. So who bears that risk? The youth, the homeowners, or you and your staff?
So honestly, everybody, because it's all trust, and trust is one of the biggest risks that the human individual can give. When we know we're meant to naturally trust, because we were meant to, be in unity. And so for the owner, the risk obviously is maintenance. For the property owner, is going to be maintenance costs. So basically, if property damage is occurring, if things is occurring. But what I am proud to say that in the 6 years that we've been doing housing, on annual, our maintenance cost for a property is anywhere from probably $2,000 to $3,000. So it's not a lot of property damage and the unknowns happening that typically people think about societies. The risk for us is the work we have to do to be hands-on, because the impact is not when the office is open and we're serving and supporting them in their activities. The support is when the office is closed and they just got in trouble, or they just lost a relationship, or they just didn't understand how to deal with their employer and it's after hours. Is those small conversations that add up, where our team will answer the phone, but we allow our dreamers to understand, hey, this is a boundary being crossed, and we're answering it only because you said it's an emergency. So if it's not an emergency, then know that the first person we're going to call when we respond back is going to be you throughout that. So the risk of fatigue, but we've been able to mitigate that because of our therapeutic environment having boundaries. And then the risk for the young person living in the home is commitment, because it's not a group home, it's not a foster home. When you move in with us, you're committed for a year because you're signing a 1-year agreement. You're not signing a program agreement that says, oh, I can hold you accountable, or you can curse me out and I can just kick you out randomly, or you can just say, F you, I want to leave. Because that's one thing we experienced in the first few years is young people were getting housing opportunities 18, and agencies were like, hey, young adult called me, said, I want to live there, I want to move. Like, no, that's not possible. It's not real, because if I sign a lease and I don't like my neighbor, I can't just move. I got to deal with it, and then I got to move. So that's a real life experience. So that's a risk we tell every young person up is, hey, we're going to get into this conflict, we're going to get into some disagreement, and you're not running. So are you ready to commit to us? And so them are our top risks for every category.
All right, so you emphasize trust, and trust matters. But what's the backstop? What's like the safety net when trust breaks?
Safe teams. So every young person that moves in has an assured safety meeting, which in foster care world are like staffings, MDTs, things like that. But in ours, the young person drives it. So if they're in transitional housing, it's every 2 weeks, and if they're in supportive housing, it's every month, where everybody comes together. So all of our team, all of their team, which is family, case management, guardian ad litem, whoever they want on their team, we can't tell them no. They get to drive the show. And so we have a collaborative approach where that trust is, if we disagree with something, you're guaranteed that within 2 weeks, we're going to have a collaborative call and we can all address the things that swept on the rug. But the biggest trust factor for us is in housing programs, you typically be like, you got to call 101 people to get access to the house, to go in to visit the house, to go and see the person. All of our homes are smart homes. You can call us, and if you're on that safe team, we'll give you a code and you can go in the house without none of our staff there. We're that transparent and allow our people to be fully inclusive, so that we're innovative, because we're all responsible for this young person, not just us as a housing agency.
All right, so your model, I want to go back to the young professionals, right? So you put young people in close proximity to adults with assets, authority, and power. So how do you prevent exploitation, financial, emotional, or otherwise, when those power differences are real?
So through a hierarchy of, training, resources, and support, we basically give everybody a position in the network. So just because you're a property owner don't mean you can access the property and the people at any given time. You have to become a specialist in our network, which then requires you to go through training and touch points that anytime you're in the home, we're aware and there's a reason why you're there. And so you're added a part of that team to have a role and a play. And then all of our homes have security as well, where we're able to manage, visitors, guests, conversations, and things if needed. But most importantly, the dreamer is not in a housing program that prevents them from autonomy. Like, they're an adult. We treat them like an adult, and they can call meetings when they want. They can do things of such as how they want. And so we're always making sure we're engaging and connecting in community so that there's none of that. And then on the other side, the young person, if they ever felt that or even tried to, because we've had times where, owners came in and they were over loving, and it wasn't them exploiting or being necessarily using the young people, it was the young people using them. Like, they weren't calling us, and little did we know one owner was sending groceries to the house every week. And we're like, what? Hold on. That's like $500 you just spent this month, and this young person gets $300 in food stamps, but you enabled them to sell their food stamps for some weed because you were sending food. And so we're very big on engaging and connecting. So we mitigate a lot of that because, yeah, our dreamers are the ones. Everybody that comes into our network is trained and prepped to support and provide, but it's steps. And so how we label those steps is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. If you know a young person is in phase 1, that person cannot be really given anything or invested into without a collaborative approach, because that young person has a lot of people in their corner and everybody needs to be on the same page before we enable a young person. Phase 2, they drive their own relationships. So we all trust that young person to tell us something, and then we'll just naturally invest because they've exceeded the level of not manipulation, but really relationship management. Because a lot of young people, we believe, will use professionals and manipulate them just out of survival, but it's not out of their bad people. And so we teach them how to translate those survival tactics into really valuing relationships. And so a lot of our young people in wealthy young professionals, they serve each other. So the wealthy professional will come in and serve them dinners, cook dinners, but then the young people will go over to their houses, cut yards, clean up, put together furniture. So it's all a big community where we're collaborating together. And it's not like, oh, I'm the owner and you're this, and one day you hope to be here. It's like, no, we've all been where you're at as a young person, and we're all focused on helping you get to where we're at as an executive team.
All right, so you talk through how you vet the homeowners and investors. I'm just curious, what's like an automatic disqualifier if there is one?
So really, honestly, there's not one. I'm very faith-based and spiritual, and so I pray on everything. I fill everybody out. We have, individual. So it starts with an individual call with me, and then it's a team call with more than just me, and then it's an in-person experience with the team, me, and the dreamers. And then after I hear everybody's feedback, then I send them an onboarding email and be like, hey, we would love to collaborate with you. So it's really a team decision, because I believe my life is successful because many people. So I never make a decision just me. I always ask every hierarchy. And that's what also makes us different, because in our phases, our staff are phase 3. So even when the people move in, we're telling them our lives and, hey, we used to be where you're at. So we're all making ourselves one in a phase of life, not separating ourselves.
I'm gonna step back. I know we did this in the beginning, but just out of curiosity, and maybe if the listeners are wondering too, you keep saying dreamers, so those are the young people in the homes. Is there like a backstory to that?
So the organization name is Dreams and Success Homes, and so all of this is basically utilizing homes as a way to bring dreams into success stories. And so everybody that moves in is committed to a dream. And so we're all dreamers. And so we all commit to individual goals and aspirations that create our dreams. And so Dreamers was a title that we gave everyone because, again, in systems, they have acronyms, they have, terminologies. And the number one terminology that I'm, aware of is, a client. But when I was in the system and raised in the system, I ain't like that word. Client ain't made me feel good. It made me feel like a thing. But then I got on the other side of the world, in the finance world, in the coaching world, in the, personal development world, and I was a client because I had a coach. And I'm like, well, hold on, now I feel good because my coach is this person. And now so I met in the middle. It was like, hey, I need to give a terminology so that everybody's on the same page, and not just the dreamer will have a name, but we'll all have that name. And so Dreamer was something that I researched and made most sense.
All right, so back to the hard questions now. So your model is explicitly for profit, and some people are deeply uncomfortable with any profit connected to foster youth. So why shouldn't they be?
So one thing many of my mentors, not just one mentor, said is that everything is for profit, even nonprofit. It's all about just how you leverage your dollars and what drives your company mission. And so what drives our mission is not assets in dollars, it's assets in people, in stories, and businesses. We've grown to where we are because all of our young people are growing in their assets now. Their peer supports, their work service trainees, they're doing the work in our network with us out having to outsource because we're all expanding, the wealth and the investment of ourselves. And so when I heard that, I'm like, well, okay, for-profit, nonprofit, that's just the entity structure and how it's utilized. The leadership is what matters. So as long as I have great leaders and great investors that understand when you invest with us that the dollars may not roll back out, then we can work together. Because when I created Dreams and Success Homes, it wasn't for my own wealth. It was to bring wealth together and be a hub. And so we have several other companies, and I have several other companies, and that's what creates most of my personal income and other people's income, because there's caps in how we utilize. And so to give an example, when we were first getting profits, probably it only started like a year ago, and it's not much. We increased a little bit of salaries. And then this year, when we seen profits, we now started paying the young people living with us and reinvesting the money back into them. And then in another few years, our goal is to start scholarships. And so we just continue these things and ideas that all are driven behind profits. Profits are driven up, not by the value of the property or the market in real estate. The value of our profits is driven up by the need of the people. So the more our profits increases, the more the people get, because we're only increasing our bed rates by what the people need, not by what we need as a company. And it's proven to date, at least from my research and what I'm, the people I know, we're one of the lowest housing providers in the state for the population we serve. To give an example in numbers, the average client that we receive, from what I hear, and I don't know if this is true, but the housing programs that they're coming from before us are residential agencies and like high-risk facilities that are getting $8,000 to $10,000 a month for this challenge. And that's in foster care word, it's like $275, $375 a day, $150 a day. That's all that stuff. Ours is around $2,500. Dealing with the same client within 1 day of change. 17, they were $8,000, $9,000, whatever their rates were. High risk rates. Agency saying, oh, they're behavioral. The day they turn 18, now they just low normalized rate. And so the key thing I wanted to do about rates was not based on the need of just us and the person, but what can that person really achieve? Is that person going to be a teacher who makes $36,000 a year? Cool. I can only charge up to $3,000 a month for this person, because if I show them a life that costs $3,000 and they can't never afford it by the job they get, I just set them up for a reality. So our price rates are driven by the needs of the people we serve and the careers they're aspiring to be, so that when they move from us, everything they know we got paid went directly into their pocket, and they know they can manage it and keep that quality of life.
So you talk about, when you get more profits, you're putting it back into other things. So what guardrails would stop bad actors from copying this poorly? Like, what's the line between sustainability and incentive creep?
So on the scalability side, it's not profit driven at all. It's one rate on the price point you buy a house, and it's one rate on the way you do the bids. We're now driving, and we're not a profit driven model, because like this year our projections will not increase much, because profits shouldn't increase every year to us. What profits really for us mean is just beds have increased, we've expanded more homes, and we've created more bandwidth to support people that need them directly in. And so scalability is specifically to affordability and like the markets and the rates that we do. So our price point in which we scale is around $2,000 is the cost of a young person. And so that's just how scalability would happen, because the model being profit driven is not possible, because everything we do is overlaid with the nonprofit. So all of our dollars are issued out through nonprofits, and they're doing the work that we're helping support.
All right, so I don't want to dramatize failure, but I do want to be honest about it. So what does failure actually look like in this model?
For us, really isn't even, considered as failure. We first, when it comes to failure, we're big on terminology. I hope everybody understands that by the end of this podcast, because it's all about terminology and communication for us when dealing with young people that come from the system, because we know it's communication that really has them stuck in believing and trusting adults and authoritative figures. And so failure for us is related to, first, being inevitable. So we teach them that failure really is only teaching lessons. So it's not meaning that you're worthless. It's not meaning that you're this, that you're that. It just means that you just learned a lesson if you failed. So embrace failure because it's a positive. And so failure for us always comes at quarterly and mostly annually reviews. And so what that looks like is we simply take the 40 hours expected a week, multiply that times 52 weeks or 12 weeks if it's a quarter review, and we grade them on that. You either had an A, B, C, or D. And so literally, if you took 100%, it's 2,000, 40 times 52 is 2,080 hours. That's how many hours of productivity you needed to have in a year. And so we just grade them on their productivity rather than say you failed. And so when it comes to that review, what we're saying is, hey, over the last year, you have put a C worth amount of effort into your life. Do you really think you're a person life who is worth a C after you've been through this, and that? No, it's not. And then if it is, cool, we understand you're happy, right? Cool. Well, remember the commitment we made? You said you're going to strive for financial security, meaning one day you'll never have government assistance but food stamps. But now you've changed your mind and you want to settle for housing, you want to settle for food stamps. Cool. So let's transition, because we no longer have the same values, and that's perfectly fine. So we're going to find you the right house, the right community that fits your values, and transition you out. And so failure really doesn't look like failure for us, because we're just letting them know, hey, we just have a difference in viewpoints and we understand, but we're still here to support you whenever you transition out. If you need anything, reach out.
So if a young person leaves and ends up unhoused again, how do you interpret that?
So depending on if it's, a positive transition out. So if we successfully transition them out, which for us, our retention rate is 85%. So remember, we're 6 years in. Everyone who has wanted to stay has not moved. So most of them are still with us. But for the ones that are failing, that is because, in that terminology, it's they're breaking housing agreements, meaning they're consistently smoking in the house, consistently having unpoor productivity, and they're being transitioned out. When it comes to rehousing, and a lot of our young people, if they ever get transitioned out, they have 60 days to wait until they can be rehoused by us. But most of ours that transition out successfully we haven't seen need to be rehoused. They're still in their own apartments. They're still successful now. So we haven't had a rehousing need if they transition out successfully. If they didn't, it was because they chose not to be here, and then we don't track them anyways.
All right, so you brought up the 85% as evidence that you know that it's working, right?
Yep.
Knowing, well, what other evidence do you have, though? Like, I want to hear, too. Like, what would you add to that evidence that it's working?
So right now, 90% of ours increase their social emotional awareness and intelligence. So they're able to speak more confidently in who they are, not in a trigger that somebody felt like they were. 70% of ours gain full-time employment, or stay in school more than a year. And then 85% of ours graduate high school within a year. So our success measures are high, because of our model and how we communicate and develop them. And I mean, we have agencies that will literally keep their people in certain programs until we open a new house and they can move them into our program, because of our, success. Now, we're not perfect. We've had some bad stories, and some challenging ones. And it's really been those disagreements of, like I said earlier, the risk, that depression and that anxiety. A lot of them, when they get to that year mark, we're like, hey, you still have quite a bit that you need to work on. And because you didn't make this commitment, we're not willing to move forward. So when they transitioned out, it was more like, F y'all rejected me, y'all this, y'all that, compared to, no, we just don't have the same agreement. But that's rare, for us, because a lot of ours, like I say, they choose to leave because we're similar to what the big term in foster care now is, no eject, no reject, kind of where people aren't able to kick them out. We're that. We don't want you to leave us until you fully have been terminated from the DCF government program, not our housing program.
All right, last question. I think we covered some good ground here. So this podcast is the family well-being movement, right? So how does this model fit into the family well-being movement?
For sure. It's a therapeutic empowerment, permanency as well as prevention model. Because we've transitioned a lot of young adults into successful relationships. We've prevented a lot of them from becoming, certain statistics. And it's a way that you can bring just the coaching and therapeutic side, not the housing model side of, the infrastructure, but the therapeutic community coaching and culture side into your home, and utilize as a way on how you communicate to your young people, how they communicate to you, but most importantly, a framework in how you can develop your young person to be confident and self-sufficient, utilizing the dreams mindset that we have. And it's all in a book. So I wrote a book, Smart Dreams, a motivational handbook to transform trauma into resilience. And so that is where we give individuals the opportunity to bring our model into their home. And it teaches them everything from intake all the way down to intervention, week to week, day to day.
All right, Mike. So this conversation doesn't ask listeners to agree with this model. It asks us to take risks seriously, both the risk of trying something new and the risk of continuing systems we already know aren't working. So models like this force a hard question, whether protecting young people aging out of foster care requires us to rethink who gets to participate and under what conditions. So thank you for engaging directly with skepticism rather than avoiding it, and thank the listeners for engaging with community insight. So we will continue to bring conversations that pressure test ideas in public, not just celebrate good intentions.
Thank you for sure. I'm excited to definitely see communities continue to step up and face not the pressure of working with these young people, but the blessing it is to work with them.
That was my conversation with Mike Williams of Dreams and Success Homes. This episode didn't shy away from the hard questions about safety, power, profit, and what responsibility looks like when vulnerable young people are involved. It asks listeners to consider whether avoiding risks has its own costs and what accountability should look like when we try something different. You can learn more about Dreams and Success Homes in the show notes. Be sure to follow the podcast for new episodes. You can also rate and review on your favorite platforms and share on social media. We want to thank the Annie E. Casey Foundation for their continued support of this show. And we want to thank our new sponsor, Sunlight. Sunlight connects families and professionals in the child welfare system with innovative technology tools that improve communication, protection, trust, and transparency for better outcomes. And by the way, Sunlight is also my employer. Community Insight is produced in partnership with Imagination Factory and 14th Street Studios. Thanks to Matt Anderson, Tavon Lewis, Michael Osborne, and Morgan Honecker. We want to acknowledge that the opinions and conclusions presented in the podcast are those of the hosts and guests alone and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Annie E. Casey Foundation.